Good morning, everyone. Haven't done this in a while, but here we are again. Today, we are back on the Bible. I know there's so many stories in the Bible, but I think Ruth is my favorite book, especially right now, but not for the reasons that you may think. And I know the Book of Ruth is so popular and it's so beautiful, especially among us women. And yes, it is about a love story of Ruth and Boaz, and it's about Ruth's faithfulness, and it's about like being a woman of excellence and all of that. However, today we are taking a little bit of a different route because lately I went back to this book again and I read it in a different perspective. That's the once I saw it, I just could not unsee it anymore, and it's the only way that I could read the book anymore. I've been centering Ruth and Boaz in this story, but recently I've read it from the perspective of Naomi. Oh my goodness, it spoke to me in a different way that it has never have spoken to me before. And I just saw not just the story of Boaz and Ruth in it, but also the story of Naomi and God. I really think it should be the Book of Naomi. Especially like the first section is called Naomi loses her husband and her sons, and then the second to the last section is it says Naomi gains a son. So it wasn't even like Ruth's husband dies and then Ruth remarries and gets a son. Like it was all about Naomi, and I just really love that because in the Bible God is always talking about widows and all of that, but also the main reason why I love this story is because all throughout the story between Naomi and God is all about rebuilding and the restoration that God promises. And when I really centered Naomi's story, God's character became more visible for me. Naomi represents to me the people of God and me and maybe you. I hope that this encourages someone and this gives someone hope. I hope that you've read the story of Ruth, like 4 chapters. It's very short. However, I'm going to be reading some parts that I think are beneficial. And then after a few parts, I'll elaborate on how it kind of like spoke to me and what I learned from that. Chapter 1, it says here, Naomi loses her husband and her sons. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife, that was Naomi, and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephraites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Even from these first 2 verses, it already set the stage for me, and I've learned so much from this because there was a famine in the land and they were already in Bethlehem in Judah, and that was like where the people of God lived in Judah. They were God's people, and just because there was a famine, they went to Moab and lived there, and they were Ephraites. Ephraites were from the descendant of like direct descendant where the descendants of like King David and eventually Jesus would come from. And then they went to Moab, and Moab is the place where the descendants of Lot lived. In the Bible, like the story of Lot is not very good. They went from God's place, the place of where God has them, like the place of God's people, and just because there was famine, they went to go to Moab and they chose to live there, the place that worships another god. Has a nation ever changed its God? Yet they are not gods at all, but my people have exchanged their glorious God for worthless idols. Elimelech brought Naomi to like Moab, like bro, of all places, why Moab? This is also why we gotta be wise with who we choose as like husbands, because like just because there's famine, like why are you bringing me to Moab? But bro, are you for real right now? Anyway, I'm so mad at Elimelech. Let it go. God worked it all together for good. And then the next verses, it really gives us a setting on what happens to Naomi. So it says on verse 3, Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. This makes me want to cry. Naomi was literally a rock bottom. Like, can you imagine? First of all, her husband's dead, and then initially she was left with her 2 sons, and her 2 sons ends up marrying women that is not from their people and just different from their customs and their values. After that, her sons also dies. And Naomi was left without her two sons and her husband. So she was like in her lowest of the lowest of the lowest, rock bottom. And she was a widow, like far from home. And I just couldn't imagine how hard that was for her. I think this is something that some of us can resonate with, especially in those moments where we feel like we've reached the end of our rope and we're just at the bottom and we just don't know what's the next thing, and we feel alone and we feel confused. And Naomi was there. She was literally in her rock bottom and she lost everything that was dear to her. In the next verse, it says here, when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Spoiler alert, I think you guys already know this. Only Ruth returns with her to Judah. But I wanted to go back to verse 6 where it says, when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them. She just heard that God is providing food. Once she heard that, she was ready to pack up everything and just go back. And it says here that she prepared to return home from there right away when she heard that. I've been thinking about this ever since I've been studying this, but there's this Filipino word that I don't know the equivalent in English is. I searched it, but it just doesn't quite capture it. And the word that I'm trying to get this is nagbabakasakali. It kind of translates to hoping in, but also in a just in case it works kind of way. Just in case it works, nagbabakasakali is like you're not sure whether something's gonna work, but you do it anyway. But at the same time, you're not so hopeful for it. I don't know how to translate it, but I love that Naomi's kind of doing that. Sometimes we feel so empty, we feel so tired, or that we keep losing because she faced loss after loss. She lost her husband, and then after that, like she lost her two sons. But then she did not stop there. Like she heard this one opportunity, and she's like, "Okay, girls, pack your things, get in, we're moving." One time she's bitter and hopeless, but at the same time, like she's moving. She's not staying in that place of nothingness. She's not staying in the place of rock bottom. She's moving just because she heard that God blesses her people, and she's just like, just in case God wants to bless me too, just in case God's not done with me yet, just in case God will bless me as well as these people that he's been feeding and blessing, just in case he's not done with me yet, I'm going to try that thing as well. Because sometimes we're bitter but we're not moving. Sometimes we're bitter and just like, God, why are you blessing all of those people but you can't bless me? What's up with that? But no, she's bitter, but at the same time she's hopeful. It's so real. You're so bitter and angry with God, but still like you're holding on and you're just trying one more thing. You hear about this one thing that God blesses their people with, and I'm gonna try that thing as well because nagbabakasakali, God might bless me as well. And she's like, I'm going back home with all of this bitterness, with all of this anger, with all of this grief, with all of this sadness, with all of my loss. I'm going to go back home, and I'm going back to the land of God's people. And I just love that. It says here, return, Virgin Israel, return to your towns. How long will you wander, unfaithful daughter Israel? The Lord will create a new thing on earth. The woman will return to the man. I will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint. I'm so glad that Naomi returned to Bethlehem. And I love that in this story, Naomi is a very complex character. She's hopeless, she's so bitter and angry, but still she's moving, and it's just so real because sometimes like that's what you feel when you're in the rock bottom. Like you're so hopeless and you're so bitter and you're so angry, but at the same time, what else do you have to lose anyway? So you might as well move anyway, right? But deep down, you're still hoping, like, I hope that this one thing works. I'm at the rock bottom. I can't go any further than this. Like I can't go any further down. And we can see how bitter Naomi is through all of the dialogue that was given to her, because it says here, she tells her daughters-in-law that initially wanted to go with her, she tells them to go back to their land because she has nothing to offer them anyway. Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought that there was still hope for me, even if I thought that there was still hope for me. So it tells me that she literally was so hopeless and she was just so resigned and she didn't even want to hope anymore. But at the same time, we're going back to that nagbabakasakali word where she's like, just in case, like I'm going to go there anyway, just in case God is really like helping his people. It is more bitter for me than for you because the Lord's hand has turned against me. And when they got back to Bethlehem and people sees her and is surprised to see her because like what happened to Naomi, she tells them, don't call me Naomi, her name. Naomi means joy, and she tells them, actually call me Mara. And Mara means bitter. I don't feel like I'm Naomi anymore. Just call me Mara. And you know, we identify ourselves with the feelings that we feel because she wanted to be called bitter. The lost hope that she's feeling, like, yeah, just call me that. Like I'm taking that full identity of how I feel right now. I'm just bitter. Like I'm not Naomi anymore. I'm not myself anymore. Call me Mara, actually. But then I love that what she doesn't know here is that when they returned, that was only, it says here that they returned as the barley harvest was beginning, and she was returning to the land of the God of the harvest still. And going back to the point that I was driving, where I said that Naomi is such a complex character, I love it here because I know throughout her dialogue she's portrayed as this resigned, hopeless, and weak widow who's just reached the end of her rope, but at the same time she devises and plots Ruth and Boaz's love story. The whole thing, she's the reason why Ruth and Boaz gets together in the first place. One minute she's this weak and bitter and resigned widow who Ruth has to take care and work for, and then another, she's this like wise and cunning matchmaker who put together the love story of the century. As a woman, it's just so empowering to see. She was so resigned in the way that she pushed Ruth and Orpah back, telling them to just go home, and then she was just ready to just be alone. I don't even know how she might have felt that moment. She was just so hopeless. Like she said, even if I had a husband, even if I thought that there was still something for me, meaning she doesn't even think that way anymore. She says here, I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. So she was done. But voila, God is not done with her yet. And we will see that in the story. So the next few chapters is just about Ruth and Boaz, where this book is centered. However, the reason that Ruth was blessed in the first place was because of Naomi. Because even Boaz, it says here on chapter 2, verse 11, Boaz replied, I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. How you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with the people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. So the reason that Ruth was blessed in the first place was because of her faithfulness to Naomi. And it reminded me of like God's promise that I will bless all those who bless you. That promise was still applied to Naomi, that Ruth was blessed because she blessed Naomi in the first place. The next few chapters are basically about Boaz and Ruth. At the end, Boaz marries Ruth. I don't know much about their customs and their laws, but Boaz ends up buying all of the property of Naomi's husband from her. And the story ends with Naomi gains a son because apparently in their rules and their law and their system, actually it says here, I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Their whole thing is about like kinsman redeemership, so it's still like under Mahlon's name, the property and all. The Mahlon's line is continued. That was the reason why in this story as well there was like a first guy who didn't want to marry Ruth because he didn't want that to happen. He didn't want his estate and his planning and his finances to be like all whack, because why would I marry like a widow as well? I just want the property. Yeah, according to their rules and regulations and their customs, it still goes under Mahlon's and Naomi's lineage. Their lineage continues. So in the end, it says here Naomi has a son. And let's just bring this well, let's just bring this story home and then we can talk about like the little things. Naomi gains a son. We're in chapter 4, verse 13. Ruth and Boaz like is married and now they have like a son. Now we're in verse 14. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel." And this is what I love most. It says here, "He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The woman living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Like, can you just imagine Naomi? There she was just like in her rock bottom and then it ends up she becomes like great grandmother of King David. How? Sometimes you're at the rock bottom and then the next time you're literally the ancestor of royalty. And it's just such a beautiful story. Okay. What did I love about this story? There are so many widows in this Bible. There's the story of like the widow with the oil, the widow who feeds Elijah or Elisha. There are just so many widows. Anyway, I just read this from the story of Naomi. I loved how she didn't stay in the dead place. She did not stay in the rock bottom, even though she was super angry, even though she was super bitter. She chose, once she heard that, oh, God's blessing them, I'm gonna go there too, because maybe God will bless me too. Even with the bitterness in all of her heart, she did not let it all consume her. And it reminds me that sometimes we just have to carry on and position ourselves. She positioned herself. She went back to Bethlehem from the land of Moab, the land of like people who worshipped another god. She went back to the land that God had for her originally. She still remained proactive by going back, and also with the way that she set up Ruth and Boaz. And it reminds me of how important it is, yes, to be in the place that God has for us, like to be in His will for our lives, and also like how important precision and proximity is, how strategic we have to be with where we place ourselves. I love that this whole story is also about how God rewards those who takes him on a maybe. Where did he say it? He says in the verse, "I have not said to Jacob's descendants, seek me in vain." This whole story of Naomi, it shows how God rewards those who takes him on a maybe. Having faith sometimes it's just like that. I know faith is like supposed to be and is the confidence of things not seen, but sometimes, like for me at least sometimes faith is a maybe. Faith is maybe God will also do it for me. Maybe if I do this, like God will also remind me. Sometimes faith is just believing on that maybe. Sometimes I'm not entirely sure or I'm not entirely certain, and sometimes your faith is just that weak. But even, what Jesus said, even if your faith is just small as a mustard seed, it can grow. You just need a faith of a mustard seed in order to be able to move mountains. And sometimes that mustard seed is just a maybe. Maybe God will also bless me. Isaiah 46, when Naomi felt like her life was just done and there's nothing more for her. "Even to your old age and gray hairs, I am he who will sustain you. I have made you and I will carry you. I will sustain you and I will rescue you." I love that she wasn't afraid to leave what she's known. She has been living in Moab for at least like 10 years, more than that. She's probably lived there for half her life because they moved there, the famine, and that's where Mahlon and Chilion grew up. They took wives there, and then when her husband died, they stayed there 10 more years, and then that's when her sons died. That place is probably like grew on her, and that was what she's already known, and she doesn't even know like what's waiting for her at home. I was reading this book on money, psychology of money, and one of the things that he says was about the sunk cost. It says here, sunk costs are past irrecoverable expenses that should never influence future decision. So it can be in a business, in a project, in like daily life, in your relationship where you've invested so much time in a place or with a person or in a business. You've invested so much money or effort or time or energy. in it that you're like, I don't want to live this anymore, because of all the things that I've invested in it. I've been in this place long enough. She wasn't like that. She didn't have that sunk cost drop. Like, she was ready. I'm done with this place. I don't care if this is all I've known for the last several years, for probably half my life, but I'm ready. If God's there, I want to be there too. The beautiful thing here is that she just moved. When you're in rock bottom, you don't have anything else to lose anyway, so you might as well just move. You might as well try. I love that this is a story of restoration and rebuilding, because my favorite Bible verses ever are all about the story of restoration and rebuilding. I'm not gonna keep this anymore because this is my favorite part of the Bible. Like, every day I would read this over myself. It's the future glory of Zion, Isaiah 54. Okay, I'm gonna go here. I love reading it because lately I've been thinking about how, more than failure, more than heartbreak, I'm more afraid of, like, shame. It says here, do not be afraid, you will not be put to shame. Do not fear disgrace, you will not be humiliated. You will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. For your Maker is your husband, the Lord Almighty is his name, the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth. The Lord will call you back as if you were a wife deserted and distressed in spirit, a wife who married young only to be rejected, says your God. For a brief moment I abandoned you, but with deep compassion I will bring you back. In the surge of anger, I hid my face from you for a moment, but with everlasting kindness I will have compassion on you, says the Lord your Redeemer. To me, this is like the days of Noah, when I swore that the waters of Noah would never again cover the earth. So now I have sworn not to be angry with you, never to rebuke you again. Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor my covenant of peace be removed, says the Lord who has compassion on you. And this is something that always literally makes me cry. Afflicted city, lashed by storms and not comforted. I can just imagine that's probably how Naomi felt, and sometimes that's how we feel. So when it says here, afflicted city, lashed by storms and not comforted, that's me sometimes. I will rebuild you with stones of turquoise, your foundations with lapis lazuli. I will make your battlements of rubies, your gates of sparkling jewels, and all your walls of precious stones. Because I can do sorry, God restored and literally rebuilt Naomi from the ground up, from the rock bottom. She was elevated into the mother-in-law of Boaz, and then she became the grandmother of King David, right? And even just during her time, she was this widow who came from Moab, who experienced just death and loss after loss after loss, and then she ends up becoming the grandmother of the owner of the land. It is such a beautiful story of restoration and rebuilding by God. All your children will be taught by the Lord, and great will be their peace. Amen. In righteousness you will be established. Tyranny will be far from you. You will have nothing to fear. Terror will be far removed. It will not come near you. If anyone does attack you, it will not be my doing. Whoever attacks you will surrender to you. And the last part, it says here, this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. This is their vindication from me. It's so beautiful. And where did God promise that I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten? Not only did God restore Naomi, but he gave her so much more. We're almost done, by the way. I'm just enjoying so much. But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds. Okay, more. I'm just gonna read some of my favorite Bible verses and how I relate it with Naomi. It says here, so do not be afraid, Jacob, my servant, do not be dismayed, Israel. Sometimes we can put it like this. So do not be afraid, Naomi. Do not be dismayed, Naomi. I will surely save you out of a distant place. Naomi will again have peace and security, and no one will make her afraid. I am with you and will save you, declares the Lord. I will restore the fortunes of Naomi's tents and have compassion on her dwellings. He brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and broke away their chains. But he lifted the needy out of their affliction and increased their families like flocks. Okay, I'm tired. Okay, I hope that this encouraged someone. I'm just here having my matcha. It's probably cold now. Not yet. If you're in your rock bottom or you're feeling hopeless or you're feeling like you're at the end of your rope, I hope that this gives you encouragement and hope. So yeah, have a great day. Bye.